I don't really have anything to say to start other than to ask other people to weigh in, especially Tim and Sean and George uh, and whomever else has something relevant to say about it as a kind of an opening topic.
I'd prefer to hear Tim's professional opinion before I open my mouth.
I think that's a great idea. That was my thought as well.
Jeez, put all the pressure on me. So I don't know if you want me to state specifically about the letter. I think the letter has sort of elevated a lot of realities, not only within our county, but within the state of Colorado. One around inequity, around the CDPH plan and all that they're doing. But I sort of see this as three things. The letter itself is completely factual. I didn't see anything in there that was incorrect, that I would disagree with at all. There's the letter as it stands. There is the reality of our position on the dial, and now we are and have been in red. Where are we now? Where are we going in the future? And then there's also the 5-star program, which also feeds into this. So I sort of see all three of those things as separate issues, but connected in an underlying way. As it stands right now, and let me just show you, if I might share for a moment, so a slide deck I just got literally half an hour ago from CDPHE. We were shown this yesterday by Dr. Herlihy, the state epidemiologist, looking at the difference between counties that went to red when they did and those that have maintained the orange status. Okay.
Tim, we're not seeing, there we go. We got it now. Thank you.
Voila. So this top deck that you see of this top slide, it shows counties in red mostly have seen a sustained decline. So here you have Adams, Arapahoe, Boulder, Broomfield, Denver, and Douglas. And the first line here, the orange line you see is them going into orange. The red line here in Adams, as an example, they went November 2nd into red. You see a steady decline in their numbers. Same for Arapahoe, same for Boulder, same for Broomfield, same for Denver and Douglas, et cetera. That also continues on for El Paso, Jefferson, Larimer, Mesa, Pueblo, and Weld County. The difference between going from orange and then subsequently to red, all seeing a substantial decline in their numbers. If you compare that to the counties who have not gone to red, who have stayed in orange, there is only 2 exceptions, and they both have explanations as to why. But you see all of them. Delta didn't go to red, continued to incline. Eagle, no decline, basically plateaued. Fremont is one exception, and there's a reason underlying that. Montezuma, plateau. Montrose, plateaued. Teller, plateaued. Chaffee, again, same thing, plateaued. In Grand County, they had a steep decline, but that should be noted that their indoor dining closed under a local order, not needing them to go to an actual red level. They made that decision locally to close it and stay in orange for other reasons. Moffett actually is an increase. Same with Pitkin and Yuma. So just to show a difference between counties that went to red and the substantial impact it's had on the spread of the virus compared to those counties that stayed in orange. Just as sort of a context around any conversation that we have here on out. The second thing I want to share.
Hey Tim, I saw that too when they came out, and I was wondering, I mean, causation and correlation are obviously different things, and there's 5 counties in the state, and this is a subset of those.
Yep.
I mean, being the suspicious person that I am, I'm wondering how the samples were selected.
That I don't know. They've been using these counties in a number of examples over the last several months. And so this seems to be the subset of counties that they're using as they give us any examples of anything.
Okay.
This subset has been the same, whether they're showing this or any of the other things they've been showing over the last several months. So
presumably they're representative of the state.
Yeah, because of that, I don't think they cherry pick these to just to show their point. It was Dr. Hurley's professional opinion that it is in fact the policies that were put in place across the state. And second to that is people's behavior. Obviously, the impact of Thanksgiving was far less than they anticipated. They think a lot of that was because of the number of counties that went to red, and secondarily by people making the right decisions and not doing what they shouldn't be doing over Thanksgiving. And so the policies themselves have had a significant impact on slowing the transmission of the virus.
Yeah, I just want to say one other really quick thing about it. And I could see how saying my county is red would cause me to change my behavior. I may decide not to go to that raging kegger over in my friend's basement after all. It doesn't necessarily, to me, tie directly back to the policy with respect to restaurants. That's kind of where I was, that was my thought process.
No, I agree. And they looked at, there's a number of, oh, here, I can show you right here. So this is the mobility trend. So they basically can track people via a cell phone in terms of their mobility. And here you see back in March, April, when everyone is at home, pretty much nobody went anywhere. This is the amount of time people spent at home. Here you see most people spend about 90% of their day and night at home. That is, in the summer, it was far less. We were down near 30% or so, and it's jumped back up to 50. They think the number of counties that have gone to red significantly impacted this number and driving people home as opposed to going out and going to restaurants and going elsewhere as a part of that same policy. So I just wanted to show that as some context around decisions and discussions that we have here. As far as the letter is concerned, I don't know how effective sending that letter to the governor is going to be in terms of opening our restaurants. And is that 2-week window he's going to allow the counties to open? The most likely outcome is he is going to get that letter and directly call the head of CDPHE and have a discussion, which would then return to us and have a discussion with us. If it results in that, that's great. We can have a discussion. Simultaneously, though, I did send an email this morning to the head of CDPHE asking, because of our red status and when that conversation happened, as everyone on this call I'm sure recalls, they said the week of December 18th would be our review in terms of what our numbers were and where we would go from there. I sent an email saying it's been several weeks since we've been on the decline. Our current 2-week incidence is now below 400, not quite at that 350 mark where we need to be, but it's below 400. When can we expect to have this conversation about moving to a different level within the dial? Having said that, though, we do still have 126 tests outstanding, and that could very well change our numbers back up well above 400. So these discussions are very, very sensitive to the numbers that are currently out there. So I have not heard back yet from CDPHE around that discussion. As soon as I do, I will obviously let this group know and engage in that discussion. So.
Tim, I want to ask you, going back to those slides, you said Fremont County was an exception with the story. Are you familiar with the context in Fremont?
I don't know. I cannot recall yesterday when Dr. Hurley stated that one exactly why it was, but there was a rational thought behind why, in fact, there was a decline. The other one was due, in fact, to the local ordinance of shutting restaurants down there locally as opposed to coordinating with a red status.
Tim, did she say anything about Pitkin? Because looking at their numbers, I mean, their numbers are like a curve that's going straight, up and to the right.
I do not believe so. Yeah, I can. Well, here I can share. Yeah, you can. I'll see that now. Correct. She didn't say anything specific about Pitkin on yesterday's call. I mean, part of the frustration that myself and my peers have been having and is expressed in this letter, which is why I agree that it's a factual letter, is the non-uniform application of what they're doing at CDPHE. It's a frustration that I share. It's a frustration that most of my peers across the state share. And it's creating, and the whole purpose of this letter is it's creating significant issues with how counties are moving forward. And we're looking, instead of working together, we're looking at our neighbors saying, hey, that's not fair. They're doing this and we're not able to do that. It really distracts from what we're trying to accomplish, both as counties, but also across the entire state. We made our opinion, we made CDPHE aware of our opinion and have for many weeks on this with zero response in terms of them changing the way they apply this. As far as this relates to the 5-star program, I know the Board of Commissioners received our report card that CDPHE gave me yesterday evening around the 5-star program and do we qualify for the 5-star program. CDPHE, after sending that, has recognized that that is still lacking a number of pieces of information that would be useful to us as a county, like do we actually qualify and what numbers are you actually looking for? They're working on that and hopefully I will get that soon. The 5-star program, in my professional opinion, isn't really the answer for Clear Creek County. It's not going to change anything for us. I would much rather have us get to the 350 and open our restaurants back up to 50%. The restaurants in our county are doing and have been doing a great job around implementing the guidance and doing all that they can do. I don't think putting a star on their door will do anything in terms of what they're already doing. So the whole process isn't going to happen overnight. The 5-star program is still, the details are still coming out. It's a very long process in that the county has to put together an advisory group and then as an advisory group apply to the program and then wait for the state to respond and then have us implement it. Having said all that, the state is providing no help either financially or from a personnel perspective to help us implement any sort of 5-star program in our county. So applying for one and getting one really doesn't, it's like getting a car when you don't have a driver's license. It's great. I have a car in the driveway that I can't drive because I'm only 12 and I'd love to drive it, but I'm 12. So that's sort of where I see us at this point. The restaurants are doing all they can, and I'm really trying to get us to that 350 number so we can open back up, not to 25%, but to 50%, and get that, 25%, as most restaurants know in this county, are smaller, and fitting 2 or 3 tables in your restaurant isn't going to provide you the economic stability that you need. It's far greater than that, with maybe a few exceptions in the county, but for the most part, most restaurants, 25% capacity is 3 tables. And is that any better than takeout only?
Tim, it was my understanding that if we hit the metrics to go into orange, we'd be at 25%. Is that, which one of those 2 numbers do you think is the right one?
George, I and this may sound cynical, and I apologize in advance, but I'm going to stop thinking about what's written down, and I'm going to pay more attention to what is and what the CDPHE is actually doing, right? If I feel like our numbers qualify us to have a 50% occupancy, that's going to be my argument to CDPHE. Forget the colors. If I never saw another color again, I'd be happy. This is why I'm wearing all black today. It's just confusing. It doesn't, it's not equally applied across the state, as we all know. And so it's more of can we get our numbers down enough to get restaurants open enough so that it's economically viable for them? You know, squeaking your door open so you can fit 4 people in there isn't really the answer, right? I mean, if some of the restaurant owners want to speak up, I'm not a restaurant owner, but I would imagine it's much bigger than that. You need more people than 2 tables in a restaurant to keep it open.
So since you gave me that opportunity, I will weigh in, Dr. Ryan. Thanks for that. George and I had there goes my screen. So George and I had a discussion earlier a little bit about this. Can you hear me now?
A little better.
I don't know how to do it.
A little better.
But George and I had a discussion earlier about how it would affect the smaller businesses. And reading through the program, all of a sudden now we have to comply with 10-foot rule. Now we can't be 6 feet apart. And for small businesses and you know, like the Main Street, you know, he's already so small at 6 feet rule. You go to 10 feet rule, and then all of a sudden it actually is a negative benefit to the smaller businesses. And I think going to, if we put the effort in to a 5-star program, I really believe that it will affect the bigger restaurants. It will actually, I think, hurt if we have to comply with that, with the 5-star program. I think it will hurt the smaller businesses just because of the distancing in the space. Of course, it will still bring people inside, but like my restaurant, I would have 3 tables and that's it, because I have to put them 10 feet apart. So I think there's a lot of pros and cons to this 5-star program. And then reading through it some more. Personally, I would say if we could get to orange and Dr. Ryan goes to fight for us at a 50% capacity, I think that would be a much better option and much more of a benefit to our local businesses.
So your point is to actually achieve the metric, and since we've had we don't know what's coming in the next week or the next 7 days, but since we've already had one of the 2 weeks that are generally required to get us back down, to maintain some control and try to get that number down and then be able to open up in a different way would be your suggestion. Is that what I understand, Mike?
Well, I'm suggesting that, my preference as a small business would be to try to make sure that we get to that orange level. That would be my preference. I know from the bigger businesses like a Bojo's that holds 600 people, I'm sure he would support doing the 5-star program. So it's kind of a mixed feeling of how, it doesn't just benefit. I don't think it benefits the smaller restaurants or businesses as much as it does the bigger ones. I mean,
To that point, we have a comment. To that point, we have a comment in the chat.
In a couple of weeks, how long is it really going to take us to put a 5-star program together and implement it? I think that's going to be much further out than kind of waiting until the first of the year.
To that point, or to the point that one of the points Mike just made about the larger restaurants, we have a comment from Craig Abrahamson that his calculations show that at 25%, he's got 31 people indoors, 31 customers potentially versus 0 right now. And so that just bears out what Mike said. To a smaller restaurant with a 10-foot, and that's presuming that at 25% and 10 feet or something with a 5-star, we'd be at that he'd be able to achieve 31 around those tables and so forth. And but in the smaller restaurant, it's at 10 feet apart. You're saying you'd have 1 or 2 tables and the littlest ones.
Dr. Ryan, how long do you think it would take to put a board together, or I'm calling it a board, but a group together, get people hired and implement a program like that 5-star program? Do you have any idea what really effort that would take from the county?
Mike, the way that it's written, it isn't my ship to drive. I'm merely one of the captains on the ship. Many other captains include business owners like yourself, people across the community who have a stake in it, who are really the advisory committee on that. And the biggest challenge that I see is funding. Who's going to pay for this, and hiring people right now to fulfill that role is probably the most time-consuming element of it. Having said that, we have to actually fill out an application and apply. So how quickly the state turns around that application, I can't say. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks. So I cannot imagine the entire process would take less than a month from getting a group together, writing the application, applying, getting response, and hiring somebody at absolute minimum a month. I can't see it happening any quicker than that, particularly around Christmas and New Year's.
So my 2 cents on the 5-star program, at least as it relates to today's conversation, is that we're not in a position to issue any direction or make any decisions on it. We definitely need to look into it to know the pros and the cons and how it could work. I think that's about all I have to say on the topic
Kind of at this moment is what you're
at
saying.
this moment.
At this moment, the information, the resources don't exist to justify a decision. I do see, I'm looking at a text right now that came back on that county's letter, which is what prompted this meeting. And I have back that, yes, they're pretty nervous about sending it, given what's happened with some other letters that have gone out and stuff. And also have heard that at the state level, they are considering right now, without having received that letter, they're looking at possibly letting ski counties operate at 25% through the winter holidays. Obviously, if they're going to do that, that's going to happen pretty soon. So I would expect that would be a decision that would be forthcoming pretty quickly. Although that's another wait and see and monitor on a day-by-day basis and see what they come up with in the next day or so.
I think the 5-star program, in theory, never mind COVID, I think the 5-star program in theory is a great one, right? If you're a restaurant owner, having people know that you have the highest level of cleanliness and regard for food process, the whole thing, and have that proudly displayed on your establishment and have it known on Yelp and all those other sorts of things is going to draw business in. And so moving forward from a restaurant inspection perspective, I think a 5-star program makes absolute sense. But as far as it relates to COVID, I think we've heard everything about it.
So, okay, so I'll share my thoughts on the letter. It sounds like this is largely moot as well, so I'll be brief. It seems like there's some meaningful differences between us and the other counties that are potentially signatories to that letter. We're pretty far from those other counties in terms of our case counts. We are about 4 cases away from being at 350 per 100,000. Summit County is at 1,000 cases per 100,000, for example, as one example. So I think whereas there might be cause for us to say, hey, we're close enough to orange, we'd like to get in there early. I don't know if that fact pattern exists with those other counties. And another fact pattern that doesn't match is a very real concern that they have is what are they going to do when thousands of people are suddenly in hotel rooms? We just don't have that, much to our chagrin, problem. So it's my opinion. I don't know that we help them by signing on, and I don't know that we help ourselves by signing on. And it sounds like it's not going to be submitted anyway. And that's probably all I have to say about that letter.
I have similar feelings about it. So reading what I'm reading right now, coming across the wire, it's the state's already got the message that was a desire and it's coming, and they're trying to figure out what to do about the ski towns in this next 2 weeks. And it's on the governor's radar. But the question is what the next step would be if we see inaction within a few days. And it sounds like our actual fastest path to a reasonable, and Craig says, can we make sure they include us as a ski town or a ski county? And I think they do already. We
Yeah.
have two ski areas. We have two ski areas.
Yeah, we're on the radar as a ski community or a ski county for sure.
We've been on all the correspondences that have been coming as they're talking about it. So the answer, I think, to your answer is yes, Craig, although I haven't actually gone out and seen a chart of legally what is considered a ski county or a ski town. But that's a good question. And the other part is so that's apparent, that's potentially on the radar, and there's no guarantees it's going to happen. And then we don't have any guarantees about what our case count's going to do. But if we have a second week, then we're in a very strong position to move down into the orange range anyway, any second. And I think at that point, even if there was a lag in administration, it would be justified to make that phone call to CDPHE for that purpose for the state. And Tim has made the point that he can make a very strong argument then for even 50%. But then I've asked Tim, I'll let everybody know I put Tim on the spot 2 or 3 days, a couple days in a row here, and said, okay, got it. You've told me everything you think as a scientist and a public health director. Now tell me what you would say if you were a county commissioner. Yes, no, and so I think it would be premature in light of everything we just discussed to put him on the spot one more time and ask him that question, is because this would be the 3rd day in a row I've said, did you change your mind yet? Or are you still there? But as we see those case counts change, we can ask that question again, because I think the most valuable information we have is data and science. And we have some good trends going on here in the county as of right now, if they bear out for another week.
Yeah, if I might just add a point of transparency. I look at the numbers and I cannot, just like any of you, explain the irrational, illogical, unequal treatment between counties that CDPHE and the state is doing. I can't explain that behavior. All I can do is fight for us, fight for our county based on the numbers that we have, and give a fact-based, logical, rational argument to CDPHE about why we should be in one place or another. And that's what I'm doing. I'm constantly looking at numbers. And as I said, I sent an email this morning to CDPHE saying our numbers have continually looked good for 3 weeks. We're not quite at the number we need yet, but we're fast approaching that. All of our metrics are headed in that direction, and 2 of the 3 are already at that level they need to be. And we'll continue to do that in full transparency. That's what I'm doing. I want every restaurant open ASAP, 100%, bless you, and as quickly as possible. But I can't force that on CDPHE. They have to be the ones to say, yes, you can do it. I know who to fight and who not to fight and what battles to fight. And I'm trying to come to the fight with the best available information that I have and best argument that I have to get things open as quickly as possible.
And I would say,
Weigh in super quickly. I think George is exactly right. I mean, I appreciate our neighbors reaching out to us and inviting us to be part of what they're doing. But in some respects, sending a letter like that is kind of kicking the governor's office in the shins. And if we're about to, get close to the goal line ourselves, I don't see why we would want to do that.
Yeah, and I think one other thing I would say is, and so this is a full disclosure out here in the public now for the best transparency we can, that I'm going to guess, I know I as a county commissioner am very sensitive to this, that if our public health director, if our numbers come down to where we feel like we're ready to move into orange, and if there's a need to call a meeting, we normally have 24 hours notice. We're sitting here on Thursday. If I get a particular piece of news from Tim, whoever's the chair next year, that'll be George, has that authority to call what we consider to be an emergency meeting, and looking at the economics and looking at the, what's at stake for everybody. No intent not to be transparent, but if there's a way that we can be fast and nimble and act in a way that's appropriate and safe on behalf of our businesses, I'm just going to call a meeting, and we're going to have a meeting. And we're going to, if there's a decision required of this commission to get something going. So, our cell phones are on, and we'll react to the best information we get, both out of the governor's office, CDPHE, regarding these things. We're watching on the wire constantly in these negotiations that are going on right now.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is I really, Tim, appreciate your idea about making a reasonable argument based on the facts on the ground versus based on some charts and diagrams and framework that somebody slapped together to try and fit in, to try and accommodate every single county in the whole state. So you have my full support for that.
Right. I would say that based on what we could say is the capricious nature in which that dial's been applied anyway around the state, that I have a little more confidence in the judgment that you would make in any case.
And one thing that really is bad about all of this is we're sitting here talking about restaurants,
Right.
but we all know that when we're talking about restaurants in the overall picture is the survival of our other businesses. Without the restaurant seats being filled, the retail stores and others suffer just as much, if not worse, because there's nobody up here to go into their shops. You know, it benefits Bojo's being on an hour wait because those people are going into shops and buying things and frequenting our community. So, you know, so this is, if anybody out there that's listening said, oh, they're only talking about restaurants. No, we're also talking about other businesses and how that economically benefits them. So I just want to make sure that nobody out there that's listening thinks that this, oh, they're all about restaurants and that's it, blah, blah, blah. But no, this is about all of our businesses throughout the county because we all live and feed off of each other.
You know,
It makes a
go ahead.
Oh, I
Right.
was just going to say that makes a lot of sense. I've had similar conversations with retailers in Georgetown and Idaho Springs. The restaurants are the engines of our economy, and they're at the most financial risk.
And there are a couple of other similar actions that we can take and think surgically how we as local residents can benefit our businesses too. One that's come across my radar a couple times is we keep talking about our retailers and our restaurants, effectively our for-profit businesses. And it's been pointed out to me that we have nonprofits who also thrive on these trades, on the tours that they give and the contributions they receive. And they have been very, very sympathetic to remaining safe throughout this entire thing, but taking a gigantic hit. And they have paid employees working in those places. You know, you can look at the Hotel de Paris, you can look at our visitor centers, you can look at all these places where things are going on. And so I would urge those of us who are still, you know, employed and making money to remember that they're out there. They need our contributions more than they ever did, and they're very, very limited in what they can do right now. It's almost nothing. And so to push our nonprofits and make sure that we're doing something for them too is really, really important, because a lot of the work that they do is what helps maintain some of the flavor and historic character of our towns that causes people to want to come and frequent the businesses. So it's all part of a thing that's cycled together. Another thought is if we end up in a situation where we do have like a 25% thing, something that makes it very difficult for restaurants to barely put enough people in them to do any good, we can do something that is both a safety measure and an economic measure at the same time. As local citizens, one thing we can do is say, well, now people are coming into these restaurants and there is some potential spike that can come out of that, even at 25%, particularly with a lot of people coming in from out of town and tourists. So, you know, we can encourage our local residents to frequent those places, but frequent takeout, so that you're not actually going into those places and occupying those precious few tables that they can put people at that are coming in from out of town anyway. So call your restaurant, order your dinner, order your Christmas dinner from them, whatever you know, and order it takeout and leave those tables open so that you can be adding to what's going on inside of that building instead of taking away from it, instead of being part of it and preventing them from getting one other customer into the building. When they're limited, the takeout is still the best thing we can do. And when you go for takeout and you see that button to push on the screen or something about a tip, there's never been a better important time to tip high than right now when their volume is low, because that's also volume for their wait staff.
Well said. So I want to ask about just with relative to where we are, our case counts. We went into red early. we went into red with the hope and the goal that going into red as early as we did would get us open for our peak December season. We are in orange with 2 out of our 3 metrics, and we are approximately 4 cases above being there in all 3 of the metrics. My understanding is that the state wants to see that stay stable for 2 weeks. And so what that means is that if we do nothing but wait to hit our metrics, I don't want to say do not, obviously we're doing a lot. But if we wait for the metrics and we wait for the 2 weeks, it's January before we're in orange. What seems true to me is that there's not anything magical about 350 cases per 100,000 versus 400 cases per 100,000. But there is something very magical for our economy about the difference between December 17th and January 3rd. And so I am interested in at least discussing and hearing from you, Tim. Is it responsible for us to ask to go back to orange earlier, as in, I mean, as early as now, with the full understanding that that can gain us some time and it will increase the risk of COVID spread. And it will also be very meaningful for our economy. And also the understanding that if case counts start to spike, we'll do what we have to do to protect our health.
George, you asked very complicated questions. The answer is complicated anyway. You know, as everyone on this call is well aware, the influx of people from around the United States that are going to descend upon Colorado soil imminently is huge. The impact that's going to have economically, everyone understands and knows well. The impact it's going to have on case counts. The rest of the country is on fire, in case you haven't been paying attention. Yesterday alone, we reached 3 unfortunate milestones: the highest case count yet to date, the highest hospitalization to date, and the highest deaths to date yesterday. All 3 of those in one day. And that's a trend. We're now at the 250,000 cases per day. So if folks from everywhere else in the United States are coming here, you can imagine what they're going to bring with them. So the impact that's going to have on the broader Colorado, we're going to find out in the coming weeks. Whether Clear Creek makes a decision or moves from red to orange or orange to red, we're going to see that statewide in basically in spades as people come and spend time here and do those sorts of things. If we're a case away from 350 and we've been at that level for several weeks, we're holding our ground. I think at that point, if we didn't have this influx of people, I would say I'm very comfortable with us going to a much more relaxed regimen in terms of what restaurants and other establishments can do. What scares me is those tens of thousands of people who are coming and what they're bringing with them. I think Randy makes a great point. Let the tourists eat at the restaurants. Let the tourists shop at the shops. And they will make up for anything that we don't do as a community in terms of shopping there. Because those numbers, they're not going to drive our case counts. Us getting infected here in Clear Creek are what driving that. So at this point, the answer is quite complicated. If we have the numbers and we should go to orange, I think we should go to orange and still do everything that we've been doing right. I mean, Clear Creek has been, our numbers have been excellent aside from a short window over the last month and a half or 2 months, right? We've been knocking it out of the park here in Clear Creek County. And I don't think it's luck. I think most people are doing the right thing. Some are not, and I don't know what we're going to do about those sorts of people, but most are doing the right thing. So as long as we maintain that and continue to do the right thing, what goes on around us will accommodate and go from there. So when our numbers reach that point, as I've already emailed CDPHE to have that conversation to say, our numbers have been on the decline for over 3 weeks now. It's time to begin to have that conversation of what do we do in our county. I think what we're doing here has been very effective. We had a huge blip just like everyone else in the entire country. When the rest of the country's on fire, it's really hard to protect your own house from starting on fire. Do you know what I mean? Eventually some embers are going to get on your house and you'll put them out, to use the fire analogy. But I think we can open safely. It's just a matter of being diligent in what we're doing, and making sure that we're taking every precaution. You don't need a 5-star on your restaurant door to be a 5-star. You know what the guidance is. We've been giving it now for months. And implementing that to the best of your ability, I think will go a really long way, and has to up till now. So that's sort of where I stand at it. When the numbers suggest what they do, we'll have that conversation with CDPHE and move forward. If we're at 450, I'm not going to call CDPHE and say we should be in orange. I don't know what response I'm going to get. Probably not one that's, sure, we'll move you there right now. Although you never know. I don't know. I'm growing more cynical by the day.
One thing I would say is the important thing here is once we're able to reopen at any capacity, we've got to stay open. I don't think that there's any business in this community that will be open for another month and then another shutdown. I can guarantee at least 50% of the businesses in this community are going to go out.
Yeah.
So the best way that we can get there, that we can keep our doors open at any capacity and continue to move forward. It's the shutdowns when we can't have anybody inside is what's killing us. So that's the last thing we want to do is open up and then a month and a half or 4 weeks from now say we got to shut down again. We got to go back to red. That's what's killing our economy, and that's what's killing our businesses.
No, Mike, I understand and agree with you. And that's why it's important to get our numbers down to a level that is stable and manageable. And so we're not going up, we're not spike, we're avoiding those spikes, because those spikes are what are going to get us back into the red. The same with the 5-star program. If you have a spike in your community, they can halt the 5-star program. And suddenly all the work that we did for a month and a half is now on halt because our numbers shot up in a 2 or 3 week period. I really hate to put forth all that effort when there's very little reward and it can be taken away so quickly. I would rather focus our attention on driving our numbers down to a level that's manageable, that isn't going to continually do this. It's going to stabilize and maintain that, and will allow restaurants and all the other businesses to stay open consistently and provide that level of consistency economically as well as otherwise.
I think that what that does is it brings to my mind a message that we started out with early on, and it's on our stay the course signs. We stay open by staying healthy. And this is not, we commissioners, putting that in our letters on that community connection, which was, it's our residents, our entire population has to realize that by being surgical and vigilant about how we open and how careful we are ourselves is the thing that's going to allow us to both stay healthy and also keep our economy open. It doesn't work if we engage in behaviors. Let's say we see the vaccine on the horizon and relax our behavior a little bit through the holidays. All we do is get sicker and shut down our economy again. And so and that's why I brought up the thing about, let's remember, we don't have to go inside the restaurants, and that's nothing against restaurants. It's letting them save those, buy from the restaurants, give them your money, pick it up at the front door and get out of there, and thereby stay healthy and thereby help them stay open. And then I think the other message is for their staff. If you look at the medical staff that are on the front line, a lot of those people are dealing with COVID patients every day, but because they're really careful about how they operate, because they observe all of those self-protection measures, they're able to stay healthy themselves. That, sure, they get sick because they're exposed to it, but it's amazing how well, just by following protocol, they're able to prevent themselves from getting COVID, even in that environment where they're treating COVID patients, which means that our restaurant staff that are inside those buildings with those tourists coming through, it's really, really important to remember this is serious business. You're frontline workers on behalf of the economy and the whole community. And so as frontline workers, maintain, keep yourself safe. we don't want you to get sick. And anyway, I can't think of another way to say it.
No, Randy, I think you raise a good point, and I'm seeing this with my own daughter who has a job at a restaurant down in Golden. Their number one problem is keeping staff healthy and non-COVID, either having COVID or exposed to COVID where they're on quarantine. Literally, there's 32 people who work in her restaurant, and there's only 7 who are actually available to work, which gets at Randy's point. You are the frontline restaurant workers who are they're dealing with customers who do not have a mask on, who really don't care about you or your health or well-being. Nothing against them, but right, they're there to eat. They're not taking into consideration your well-being and so it's critical that when restaurants do open and storefronts do open more broadly, you take every precaution in the world. I mean, I get physical therapy twice a week. I double mask and I take every precaution that I have to get physical therapy. I don't really have a choice, but I take every precaution I possibly can to protect myself against what I perceive as an increased risk.
Well, it looks like, the drift I'm hearing is that we have no particular action or change to make today, other than we've acknowledged and kind of informed everybody and ourselves of the current landscape. We're going to keep a kind of a minute by minute, day by day eye on what's coming out of the governor and CDPHE. And rest assured that we're seeing emails every hour or so from people popping back and forth out of the other counties that are part of organizations that we're part of, and we're on their text strings and email strings, and so we know pretty quickly when something goes down. And Tim, of course, is embedded almost in CDPHE now. He's I think they're going to give him a desk down there or something, a virtual desk.
I'm fine right here, although coming to Idaho Springs today, I don't know who I picked that bone with, but 70 is a nightmare. It's an hour and a half to go 18 miles. I mean, who's in charge?
Well, what's happening is, I'll give the brief explanation on that. The peak period shoulder lane project is almost at the end in completion. And what they're trying to do is get that pain over with as quickly as possible, which is why they came to us and said, we want to pull out all the stops and get that thing paved so that we can get out of the way and let that pavement be open to be used as we go through the rest of the year and the rest of the winter season. They were hoping to accomplish it before Christmas, and so they're just out there pulling out all the stops, paving, and so the decision was just, endure the pain and take a shot to the gut and get it over with as quickly as we can. And what you saw was that today, they're trying not to interfere with weekends so much, and so this is their last day before the weekend starts running. And of course, the weekend at Christmas season, when we get this close, the weekend isn't just, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It starts to become the whole week. And so what we saw was a little higher than usual Thursday traffic, and the fact that they fired up all their engines and went out and started paving.
I was just kidding. I do know who's in charge, but I just want to give a brief vaccine update, because we do have an update, and we have most of the cast of characters on. We are highly likely to get our first shipment next week of the Moderna vaccine, although we're only receiving 100. It is possible that we receive a shipment every week moving forward. I don't know how many. And we have identified the groups that were vaccine first. They've been identified, they've been contacted, they know who they are. Unfortunately, we're given very little lead time in terms of knowing when we're getting the vaccine, and apparently Christmas and New Year's are irrelevant to distributing and disseminating vaccines. So I and Crystal, our head nurse, will be on call 24/7, so that when we do receive those vaccines, they will be disseminated ASAP. And I'm really hopeful that we can get as many people vaccinated. The beauty of our county is we don't have a lot of people, so we can probably vaccinate a higher percentage of our county than other counties can week by week and month by month, which is a huge, obviously, benefit to us as a community. We will disseminate more information as we get it. It changes almost daily. Updates change regularly, and we're getting new information as we move. So I will get that information to Beth, the sender of all information that is relevant in the county. I will get it to her and she will get it out to anyone and everyone in the county that needs to know.
Well, any further comments? I think with that, we're going to be adjourned for the day. I know I have another meeting in 6 minutes, so.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.